Today we are talking about my first impressions on the Tokina 50mm t1.5 Vista Prime. But first, if you're new to the channel, my name is Anson, and on this channel we talk about filmmaking, specifically budget gear, tutorials, and a look at the projects that I'm working on. So if that's something you're into, consider subscribing. Now, over the last couple weeks, there have been a turn of events that have resulted in me buying Tokina cinema lenses and selling my Leica vintage lenses. And so to kind of avoid that, potentially not ever reviewing a lens, or maybe even waiting a really long time to review a lens, I did want to talk about my first impressions. And so we are talking about my first impressions, but we are going to break down what I think about this lens in the same way we usually do. And that's by talking about the image, the build, and my overall thoughts. So let's start talking about the image first. Now, a couple weeks ago, I reviewed the 50mm Leica lens, and I talked about it being the perfect marriage between sharp, but also really organic. And what's really awesome is this lens is also kind of that same marriage of really sharp, but giving you that ultra organic look. One thing I appreciate about this lens is the roll off that you get with this lens between your in focus and out of focus areas. There's more of that smooth organic transition rather than just like a hard edge that you might see from some stills lenses. And that's one thing I love about this lens is the in focus area has a really nice smooth roll off to the out of focus area, and that is just giving you an ultra pleasing kind of organic look to the image, which makes it really appealing. And so that's one of the first things I really like about the image. The other thing is the lack of focus breathing. Now, that was one thing that drove me nuts about the Leica lenses. I love the image that came from the Leica lenses, but because they're older vintage lenses, there was massive focus breathing present in those lenses. Now, the 50 f1.4 was pretty reasonable and actually really well controlled, but some of the other lenses in that set were just terrible. Now, with this lens, there's virtually no focus breathing. If there's any, it's very minimal. Something else I really like about Tokina cinema lenses is how they handle flaring. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say Tokina has some of the best flaring on the market, especially at this price point, and giving you that good mixture of a lot of flaring, but not like super crazy out of control. And so that's something that really appeals to me about Tokina cinema lenses is the overall flaring. And so overall, with the last couple shoots that I've done with this lens, I've been massively impressed with the image that comes out of this lens, just giving you that really sharp but yet organic look to your image. And so right away, I've just fallen in love with the image that comes from these lenses. And so with that, let's go over and talk about the build of the lens. Coming in at 173mm in length and weighing around 4.7 pounds, this lens is definitely a hefty lens. Now, with that being said, a part of that is that this lens is made of metal and glass, and I love every part of that. Something that I really appreciate about the lens build is the fact that the mount is interchangeable, and the mounts that are currently available are PL, LPL, EF, Micro Four Thirds, and Sony E mount. The focus throw is nice and long. It's a 300-degree focus throw. Something you may have to get used to is that there is a 114mm outer diameter, and you're probably going to want to use matte boxes with these lenses. But overall, I'm really happy with the build of these lenses. They are high quality cinema lenses. It is going to be very hefty, but on a good rig is definitely manageable. So with that, let's go over and talk about my overall thoughts and what are my first impressions after a couple shoots of using this lens. I've just been super impressed with how this lens performs. It gives you that nice marriage of a vintage lens and the characteristics of a vintage lens, but in a modern cinema lens. One thing that drew me to this lens is reading an article from the DP of one of my favorite shows, Ted Lasso, and why he chose the Tokina Vistas to shoot that series. And in that article, he talked about how he normally uses lenses that have that vintage characteristic or rehouse vintage lenses. And these lenses really appealed to him because they were readily available. They were easy to get because they're modern lenses. They're still in production. They're not having to be rehoused or something like that, but they also offered a lot of those vintage characteristics. And that immediately spoke to me and made me think on how to get my hands on these lenses. Now, from the last couple shoots that I've had with this lens, again, I've just been nothing but impressed. I think if you are a low budget filmmaker like myself, I am a low budget filmmaker. This is just where I've decided to invest my money. I'm not buying a red Komodo. I'm not buying, you know, $6,000 to $10,000 cameras. I'm buying more expensive lenses. And so if that's you, then absolutely do that. But if you don't want to spend a ton of money on lenses, you should absolutely look at renting these lenses. And I do have a code to lensrentals.com to get you 15% off that rental if you so choose. And so that's it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope this is kind of helpful to see this first impressions. Let me know if you like this format. I may do it when I get the 16 to 28 as well. And so with that, as always, thank you all for joining. Go and find your journey. Go embrace life. Stay safe. Be happy. Support each other. Wash those hands, and I'll see you here next time. Peace.
Say hello to the people. Say hello to the people. You're out? Okay. Okay.